Peace and Freedom Wake-Up Call on WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carrboro, 103.5 on your FM dial. You can watch the show on the People's Channel after a week's delay, Thursday at 10 p.m., Friday at 6 a.m., and Tuesday at noon. You can also see the show on our YouTube channel, Wilf Wake-Up Call. I'm Ear Schwinzer here with our host, Lori Hoyt, and our special guest today is Susan Romaine.
Hi, Susan.
Good
Glad
evening.
you could come.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had you on, and when you were here before, we were talking about two organizations that you're real involved with, but now there's a whole big new thing you're doing, which is running for the Board of Aldermen in Carrboro, and that is very exciting. And so we just want to hear more about. Now I'm finding an angle to. We have a lot of machinery here to peer through to see our guests. So we're here to talk about all of that. And
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, so I think we should start with the newest and work our way backwards.
Sounds great.
Yeah, okay. So you're running for the board. What made you decide to run, and how's it going, and all of that, and your platform, and
Well, good. We've got a lot of ground to cover
a lot
today.
of ground, isn't it?
So we'll actually start a little bit backwards.
Okay.
The reason I'm running for Carrboro Board of Aldermen is that I've been very active in the community for about the last 15 years.
Yes, you
I'm
have.
one of the founders and remain a director of the local hunger relief organization Porch. And I'm also a founder and remain a director of the nonprofit organization Orange County Living Wage. And I was a precinct chair for Hogan Farms for about 14 years as well. So I've been here in the community, very actively involved in the community, and decided I'm going to make a run for Carrboro's Board of Aldermen to see if I can take some of that, the partnerships and the collaborations, and bring those to the board, and also look for ways that we can expand upon those to do things maybe even a little bit better.
Wow, so you've been doing a lot in the community. Where were you born? Were you born around here, or you?
We've been here for about 15 years. My home is Alexandria, Virginia. I'm the daughter of two educators, and lived in Alexandria, went to school there, and then went on to University of Virginia, moved to Chicago, Boston, and then had the opportunity, then lived back in DC, and then had the opportunity. I did a big loop and came back here, came to Chapel Hill in 2004, and we've been living, our family of 5. We have 3 kids who are all grown now, but we've been living in Lake Hogan Farms, and this very much feels like home, and it would be an honor to be able to serve the community on the Board of Aldermen.
Well, you've certainly been here a long time. 15 years gives you a very good opportunity to understand the community and to get to see what the good things are about it and what the needs are. And so you've been working on these 2 major organizations to try to, that's particularly both of them are hitting our economic disparity, and that's dear to the Women's International League's heart. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about those 2 organizations.
I would love to. So I think of them as going very much hand in hand. One is hunger relief, meeting an immediate need of all too many people in the community without enough food. And the other is the longer term solution of living wages.
Mm-hmm.
And let me talk first about Porch, because it's a very timely question. On Saturday, Porch celebrated its 10th anniversary. October 26, 2009, 2 friends and I organized our very first food drive in Lake Hogan Farms, and we collected 233 cans of chicken and tuna and beans. Here we are 10 years later, and Porch has now provided $2.4 million in hunger relief to the community. So it's really, I think it's just a really great example of offering people, people in this area are very busy, and we're offering people just sort of this very simple way to contribute. And if enough people get involved, then all of those cans and all those cans of soup and boxes of cereal, they all add up. And it's a good example of we each do our small part, and then together we can really make big things happen. So I'm really proud of Porch. I'm really so proud of our hundreds of volunteers that help us each and every month with these food drives.
So if I understand it, people put a bag of canned and box food on their porch at certain times, and it's picked up by volunteers?
That's right. On a designated day each month, we have 160 neighborhoods in Chapel Hill, Carborough, where people put out food. Each of those neighborhoods has a coordinator, and that coordinator goes porch to porch, picks up all the food gets sorted, and it gets distributed to 15 local pantries. But the other thing that's happened over the years is that some people started to write a check. And so we took these cash donations and we started a fresh food program. So Porch is now serving 425 families, all at-risk families in Chapel Hill, Carborough. And these families receive a week's worth of fresh food each month, fresh fruits and vegetables, milk, eggs, and chicken. It's very all healthy. Some of the food caters toward the refugee community we serve. We try to cater toward their native vegetables as much as we can. So we have the non-perishable program serving the pantries, and we also have this growing fresh food program that we're especially proud of as we move toward encouraging people as much as possible to be eating those healthier, fresh diets that are, of course, more expensive.
So the canned goods go to the various pantries like Interfaith Council and places like that?
Yes, we have 15 pantries that we serve. We don't serve IFC, but we do serve Rogers Road Community Center and St. Joe's CME Church, and lots of, we serve various faith-based organizations that have a pantry.
Okay.
We serve Orange Congregations in Mission out in Mission out in Hillsborough.
Yeah.
So 15 pantries, and we also have a Food for Schools program. This is a healthy snack program where we provide each of the schools in each of the public schools in Chapel Hill, Carborough, healthy snacks for kids that are, maybe they missed breakfast that morning and they're having trouble staying focused in the classroom. So they can get a healthy snack just to tide them over until lunchtime. And this program is totally driven by business sponsors. So we have a business sponsor for each of the schools, and that business person provides the healthy snacks for either a semester or an entire year.
Tell us who a couple of those businesses are, just a few of them.
Yeah, so the ones that we have, some realtors that immediately come to mind,
Okay.
And
That's
we
really
have
nice.
The Chapel Hill Carborough Rotary Club, Sunrise Rotary Club. We have some foundations. We have just a real host of a wide range of different organizations. So I hate to signal too
No,
many
I
up
know.
because I know I'm going to miss folks.
Okay, we just know that's just a brief sample. I didn't know anything about that. That's really nice to know about. Yeah.
And they provide either $500 or $750 sponsorships.
Okay.
And we try to focus on the healthy snacks, so things like applesauce and bags of raisins and peanuts and that kind of thing. But the teachers, the social workers say it really helps because there are kids that are having trouble just kind of staying focused in the classroom. They're hungry,
Sure.
and it really helps to sort of tide them over. So many times it's the teachers that themselves that end up digging into their pockets to provide these healthy snacks. And as we all know, teachers are not exactly making 7-digit salaries here in Chapel Hill, Carborough. And so it's really nice that we can take some of this financial burden off of them and have Porch be able to step in and help as much as we can.
So Porch started small, and as it saw needs, it expanded what it's doing, and And now it's in, you said 160 neighborhoods. So
160 neighborhoods, and then what's really exciting about Porch is other communities have heard about us. They've heard about this really simple idea
Yeah.
for a neighborhood food drive, and they have replicated it. So we now have a porch in Durham, we have now a porch in Western Wake, we have a porch in Charlotte, we have a porch we have 3 porches in the state of Ohio.
Oh my
But we
gosh.
recently had, just last week, we actually had a conference where we brought together the directors of all of these different porch affiliates, and we talked about strategies that we're using to grow participation, and we talked about the website and fundraising opportunities. So it's really nice to see this other communities take this ball and run with it.
That's so wonderful that, and how many years ago you started, 10 years ago?
10 years ago. So the most recent addition to Porch is we have an advocacy program now, and we're very excited about this. Where now, as some of our volunteers come to our food sorts, they have the opportunity to do handwritten postcards to some of our locally elected officials. And these postcards focus on food insecurity issues, poverty. They can be urging a legislature to please protect, SNAP benefits, or please lift the minimum wage, because climate action's connection to food insecurity. We've done postcards on climate action. So it's been really fun to have this most recent program that we're doing to not only address hunger here in the community, but also look at this broader picture of how can we, in small ways, but try to impact public policy in a helpful, positive way for some of the families that we serve.
Well, I'm impressed. You are really a good organizer. I mean, that's really...
Well, not me.
No.
We just live in a phenomenal... I'm so fortunate. The best decision I ever made was having the opportunity to become friends with Christine Cotton and Debbie Horwitz. So the 3 of us got this going, and in the course of the last 10 years, we have just been so fortunate. When I say hundreds and hundreds, I mean it. There's literally hundreds of people that are picking up bags of donated, the donated bags from porches, or they're helping to sort the food, or they're delivering the food to the pantries, or they're packing the fresh food, or they're serving in a porch club at one of their public schools. So there's so many different aspects of this, and it really is a great example of the community coming together, rallying around a really important issue.
And it took a creative vision to get that started, so that, did you have any idea when you got started how it would grow?
No.
Yeah, I would.
I never even thought there would be a second food drive. We did it once, and it was just turned out it was so easy and it was so impactful. We just decided, shoot, why not try this again?
Yeah.
So I think it's an example of taking, sometimes, to tell you the truth, the simplest ideas can be the best ideas. And we've tried really hard to keep it simple, all 10 years down the line. If we keep things simple, it's amazing if it's the right idea and it's simple. It's amazing how sometimes these things can grow organically and just take on a life of their own. But we never would have guessed this in our wildest dreams, that we would be here 10 years later and Porch would now be having the impact that it is having in the community.
Well, that's a wonderful story, and it's such an encouraging story about people basically having, so many people having a good heart if they have an opportunity that can fit into their busy schedule to do good like that. So that's very encouraging.
I think that's really true, and I think one thing that stands out for me is not every community would do this. I think we are special. I think that Chapel Hill Carborough is just an extraordinarily generous community. I think that people here really step up when they're aware of folks that may be slipping through a safety, our safety net. So it has been, I think of Porch as being just sort of this bridge bringing these different communities together. That's one of the things that I especially love about it is we do a lot of hand-to-hand deliveries of food. So we deliver non-perishables to the pantries, but we also deliver fresh food, and those deliveries are made hand-to-hand. And for all of us, for all of the volunteers, is an example. It brings us all into contact with people that, to tell you the truth, we don't normally see in the course of our day-to-day lives. There are people maybe living in a different part of town, or people maybe that are from a different country, and maybe they don't even speak English. So we don't have the opportunities to have those day-to-day conversations. But we're all brought together, and I think it's an example of in three parking lots around Chapel Hill, Carborough, every Porch Monday and Porch Wednesday. I think it's the ultimate expression of community. Just people there. We try to convey a spirit of, it's a welcoming place. People don't feel like they're going into an institution. I'm hoping they don't feel any sense of shame. We try to learn everybody's first name and greet everybody.
So they come to these 3 different areas, parking lot, so they come to get their bag
cars.
of fresh stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have it's a drive-through. They come with their cars. We have volunteers there to pack them up with it's 2 bags brimming with fruits and vegetables, and the egg, carton of eggs and the milk, and it's a lot of logistics involved, and it only happens because we have so many volunteers. It's one of the challenges. I think this is, we are so fortunate to have so many pantries, so don't get me wrong. It's fantastic. I do appreciate, it's hard to make fresh food available because the shelf life is so short. You can't just leave the carton of eggs, sitting on a shelf, or the gallon of milk. That transaction needs to happen quickly. So it really takes a lot of volunteers to make all of this happen. But we have a truck that goes out to Costco and picks up food, and we have Harris Teeter's involved. I go down and pick up all the milk, and we get milk from out at Mapleview Farms, where they donate milk, and Cliff's Meat Market, and all of these different partnerships come together, and it's pretty amazing how it does. It's kind of like a organized chaos, I think I would describe it, but each month it all does come together in a miraculous way.
Well, that is, it's much more extensive, and that's why I wanted to hear more about it than I realized, and that's just it is a wonderful story about what you would hope that the world would be like, this sort of sharing and helping each other, and it's just a very inspiring story. It just really is. And then, so that's the hands-on helping friend to friend, and then there's the living wage. So what got you started with that?
It's a little bit similar to Porch in the sense that when you look at an issue like hunger, it almost can be paralyzing in terms of how in the world do we ever get rid of eliminate hunger in Chapel Hill, Carborough. So we took a first step. We just started this simple food drive. And similarly with Orange County Living Wage, it's pretty overwhelming thinking about how challenging it is at the state and federal level to raise the minimum wage. We've had a minimum wage here in North Carolina, $7.25 an hour, for over 10 years now. And we're the makeup of the state legislature. I don't think we're ready to have a raise at the state level. 29 states and the District of Columbia have raised their minimum wage above the $7.25, but not North Carolina. And if I look at the makeup of the Congress, we're not ready to have an increase in the federal minimum wage. So here we are in North Carolina, $7.25, and some friends and I got together at a precinct meeting actually, and the question is, okay, we're not going to raise the minimum wage. What in the world can we do? And we stumbled, by doing a Google search, actually, we stumbled across a program in Asheville called Just Economics, and they have what's called a voluntary living wage certification program. It's setting the living wage and then offering to local businesses the opportunity to become certified as a living wage employer if in fact they meet the criteria that's been set through those calculations. So we were so impressed by the program in Asheville. Again, the simplicity of this, but also it's been extraordinarily impactful. So Orange County Living Wage picked up this idea from Asheville. We started, first in 2015, we calculated the living wage. And then we started this process of reaching out to businesses and seeing, do you want to become certified as a living wage employer? We started with Markopolis Construction, and that's Markopolis, the commissioner's construction company, and he was our first certification, and here we are, 4 years later, and we now have over 200 certified living wage employers on our roster. And what we're all particularly proud of is, in some cases, an employer's already paying a living wage, and so it's just a simple process of filling out a 15-minute application. Some employers aren't quite there yet, but they decide, you know what, I really want to get on that roster, and I really want to get the publicity that comes from being on that living wage roster. So we have now raised, employers that have raised wages collectively have done so. It's about $725,000 now. Wages have been increased, and when those workers get a little bit of extra cash in their pockets, they don't have the luxury of saving it or investing it. They spend it. They can finally go out and they can get a haircut. They can finally go out and get some school supplies for their kids. They can finally go out and get the leaking faucet repaired. They can get a new tire put on the car. The money gets spent. And so if we look at the economic impact, the stimulus that has done for the local economy, $2.9 million of a stimulus that those wages have provided over the last 4 years. So another example, I think, of just a simple program, starting one company at a time, and 4 years later, we're not solving poverty, we're not lifting every working family out of poverty, but certainly it's having its impact, and at the same time I think we are creating more awareness in the community about what a living wage is, and I think that's a really important thing too.
So they get on the roster, so some of them were, to get on the roster, they were willing to raise the wages, is that, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah, and they realized that this would be a good advertising point and a good, pat on the back, that people would think well of them.
Exactly. So we do try to advertise our employers as much as possible in the community. We do that through social media. We do that, you will notice on the decals on their storefronts. We do that through our website. We do that through bi-monthly newsletters. We do it through framed certificates. Occasionally we have what are called boycotts, not boycotts, but boycotts, where we encourage people to come out and support those businesses. So we support them and promote them and advertise them in the community.
Yeah.
And so those businesses that aren't quite there yet, but they want to get on the roster because they realize there will be a lot of benefits for them. Sometimes they're willing to go ahead and lift those wages to do so. But there's another group that's lifted wages, and I think this is an important group too. It's a group that they may have thought they were paying a living wage, or they just didn't realize what the living wage was. And so once they realized what the living wage was, they said, oh my gosh, we want to support this. So there are different ways of calculating a living wage. We use something called a universal living wage formula. And this formula assumes that nobody is paying any more than 30% of their disposable income toward rent. And that's usually a pretty good benchmark to follow. And that saves the other 70%. That frees that up for things like transportation and utilities and a telephone and a car and childcare and so that's how this formula is. We take that premise that no more than 30% goes toward rent. And so if we look at average rent in this area, which is high, then we can figure out what is the living wage, what's needed in order to be able to live here. But even with our $14.25 living wage, we still have way too few people in Chapel Hill Carborough who work here and can afford to live here. So living wages is part of the equation. Affordable housing is going to be another part of the equation. Affordable daycare is going to be a part of the equation. Accessible transit is a part of the equation. All of these things need to come together so we can create more opportunities for folks who are living in Chapel Hill Carborough to live here, to have those shorter commutes, to be able to spend more time with families, and to be able to volunteer more in the community, to be able to attend their kids' parent-teacher conferences and all of
Yeah.
these things. So it's important.
So the wage is one part of it, but then the other components are important too. How much you have to pay for transportation, is there public transportation?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think we take a station break
Sure.
now, if you remember from last time.
This is WCOM LP, Chapel Hill and Carver, 103.5 on your FM dial, or you can live stream us at wcomfm.com.
And we have a few announcements. Do you want to go first? Okay, I'll go first. Okay, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, who is our sponsor for our show, and some of us are members, they're having a big weekend coming up. It's the 40th anniversary of the massacre in Greensboro. The 5 people were murdered in cold blood in the daytime, and several others were wounded. And so at this anniversary, there's going to be 3 days of programs marking the occasion. Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday. I think Friday night is going to be a play about it. And I've lost I had it out here, but I've lost it. Let me see. But if you want more info, oh, here it is. Friday night, November 1st, this is in Greensboro. It's going to be a community reading of Emily Mann's play, Greensboro, a Requiem. That's at 6 p.m. in the auditorium at AT&T State University building. And then on Saturday, there's going to be a day from 10 to 4 of educational and movement building panels and workshops. And then on Sunday, there's going to be reflection, Sunday the 3rd. This is another thing. Okay, Sunday, community worship service at Shiloh Baptist Church, again in Greensboro. And the Reverend Nelson is going to be doing the service at the church, and he was one of the ones wounded in that massacre 40 years ago. If you want to look up more specifics about all of this, go to their website, https://www.greensboro-massacrelessonstoday.org. That's all small case and all written together. Greensboro Massacre Lessons Today. And I just want to make one other announcement that next week we're going to have Maya Little on our show talking about her recent arrests and about the anti-abortion rally on campus that she participated on the other side, of course. So it's going to be a very particularly interesting program. And I think Iris has another announcement. No? About voting?
Just get out and vote.
Okay, get out and vote. This early voting has already started, and there's no excuse. We got lots of time to vote leading up to the November 5th election day. But I recommend don't wait till then. It's always good to go a little early.
And I'm just going to add one note on that because it's a little different this year, and I want everybody to be aware. So early voting actually ends on Friday. We have early voting tomorrow, Halloween, from 9 to 5, and then on Friday from 9 to 6. But there's no early voting on Saturday. Normally early voting ends on a Saturday. People are used to that.
Yeah.
But there is a change, so this is to urge everybody to come on out. There's only 2 days left for early voting. And turnout has been today with the rain, maybe more rain tomorrow. It was just a little bit sluggish compared to a couple of years ago, so we'd love to see some people coming on out tomorrow and Friday to get our numbers up.
Sunday afternoon?
No voting on Saturday or Sunday, so it's all going to end on Friday, and then there will be a break. And then Tuesday, Election Day, polls are open 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night. And on Tuesday, Election Day, it's gonna be really important that people go to their polling place, not to an early voting site. Sometimes there's confusion, but people need to go to their polling place on Tuesday, 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night.
And just to know, if you go for early voting, it's not at your polling place. Come to the town hall or the senior center. I'm sure there's a few other places too.
Town Hall, Carborough Town Hall,
Oh,
where
yes.
I've been for the last couple of weeks. So come visit me there. I'd love to say hello to you. Seymour Senior Center is also an early voting site. Chapel of the Cross
Chapel of the
is
Cross.
another one.
Yeah, these are the traditional ones that we have each year. But thanks for that reminder, because we always had, Saturdays was always just that morning. But we did have Saturday morning, and that's a shame, because for working people, that was a really handy time, you know, when they were off work. So, and so what time of day, during the day, how late does it go?
So tomorrow it will be from 9 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the evening.
See, that doesn't help working
And that
people.
so gets everybody, well, that's because everybody needs to run home for the trick-or-treaters.
Well, that's true.
And then Friday, the polls will be open from 9 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's still hard for working people though. So it's a shame that they
We
cut
lost
out the
that
Saturday,
Saturday.
it really is. So hopefully we'll put some pressure on those in charge, and maybe next year they'll reopen the Saturday voting. 'Cause
We
I
did
think-
have Saturday voting during the first week of early voting, and then this past weekend we actually had Sunday voting, which is rare here, and we had some souls to the polls. But normally we have Saturday, this coming Saturday,
Yeah.
and that's the one that's been taken away from
For
us.
those who wait, like.
If you procrastinated, you're gonna pay for it this year.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know. And so right now we're talking to Susan Romaine. We've been talking about two organizations that she started. The Porch, which has been feeding people, and it just has organized the whole community, businesses, individuals, just doing great work. And then also the living wage in Orange County. So I think you said there was how many, 200?
Over 200 living wage employers in Orange County now,
Employers,
many of whom are in Carborough.
Which is wonderful. So, and so they have an incentive to do that, because they do get some good publicity. It's a good talking point, and especially if they're hiring somebody, that they feel proud to work at a place that is treating people right. And plus they get a fair wage, which is the big draw. So this is all community building, and now you are looking for another way to help build community by running for the Board of Aldermen.
Absolutely. So running for the board really is a way of sort of taking this community service and extending it now into public
Yes.
service, and looking for ways to hopefully have an even bigger impact on the community.
Yes. So do you have a particular platform you want to tell us what you're hoping for?
Well, one of the issues that I'm most concerned about is the affordability of Carborough. And I've been at the polls the last couple of weeks. I've also done a lot of canvassing over the last few months, and I've had a chance to talk to lots of residents in Carborough. And the affordability issue keeps coming up over and over again. Matter of fact, I was at the polls today at Town Hall talking to a woman who's lived here for 28 years, and she said, for the first time, I'm thinking about moving, and the reason is her taxes. She just can't afford it anymore. And it comes up over and over again. I told her that the reason her taxes feel so high is that they are. So here in Carborough, we pay a tax to the county, a property tax to the county, a property tax to the town, and also we have a special school district tax. All those three things together are called an all jurisdictional tax. Carborough's all jurisdictional tax is the very highest in North Carolina. There's 532 cities and towns in North Carolina, and our tax is the highest of all.
It's higher than Chapel Hill.
It's slightly higher than Chapel Hill. And so on top of that, we also have very expensive housing. And so what we're seeing is, just as this voter expressed to me today, we're just hearing more and more about residents being priced out of the market. And what I worry about is during this process, Carrboro is really at risk of losing the diversity that goes to the core of who we are as a community. I believe in a Carrboro that's made up of people of all incomes. I believe in a Carrboro that has people on fixed incomes. I believe in a Carrboro people that have no income, that they all have a place here in our community and they all feel proud to call this home. And if we look at some of the demographics, we're already starting to see this happening. We're seeing more and more low, moderate income families relocating to Alamance County and Chatham County and Durham just because they can't afford the taxes, they can't afford rent, they can't they can't afford their mortgage anymore. So one of the things I would love to do, there are many things I'd love to do. Of course, I will be a very strong advocate of affordable housing, but also I believe very strongly that Carrboro needs more businesses with living wage jobs. And I say that because right now the commercial tax base in Carrboro makes up just 10% of our overall property tax revenues. That is very, very small. It's very narrow. And what it means is that the tax burden gets shifted, 90% of it gets shifted over to the residents who are paying a mortgage or paying a rent. And that's, it's burdensome, it's too burdensome. And so if we can get more businesses here, it will help us to sort of diversify our tax base and take some of that pressure off of homeowners. So that is what really excites me, is figuring out how can we get more businesses here. In some cases, to tell you the truth, it may be looking at some kind of shared space for businesses. I mean, it's expensive for businesses too. Rent is expensive for them too. So you may be familiar with Perch, which has co-working space back behind Still String Brewery. But the shared space, or Chapel Hill has an incubator, or they call it an accelerator called Launch, where businesses can come in, they can get subsidized rent in their case, and they also get all kinds of mentoring from UNC, from the business school, or from UNC Law School if there's legal issues. And they get all of the synergies that come from being in these cozy workspaces with other entrepreneurs. And so Launch, I believe, has now, I think over 100 businesses have spun off from Launch. Many of them have located in Chapel Hill. They're now generating revenues for Chapel Hill. And they're homegrown, which is very appealing. They're independently owned businesses where a lot of these entrepreneurs have very strong ties to the community, and they feel very invested in the community. So I would love to see Carrboro do a little bit more with this, and I think we can.
Well, with businesses, are their taxes based on the building or on their revenue?
It's based on the square footage of the building, so
building.
Just like with a homeowner.
Well, I don't know if you were here 15 years ago, we had a very forward-seeing mayor, Ellie Kinnair.
Sure.
Yeah.
She endorsed my campaign, I'm proud to say.
And she was way ahead of her time in terms of having money put aside to encourage businesses to come here. And because of her, we got the farmers market here. It started out just in a parking lot. She's the one encouraged where it's now a much bigger thing with the roofed spaces for the farmers market. She's the one, her encouragement got Weaver Street Market here, which has been such a draw for Carrboro. It's both, with sitting outside there under the trees is one of the best eating spots in town, and with the good food that it sells. So she was looking ahead back then, and I just think that it takes that kind of visionary look. She wanted to get a Costco here and one of the big stores, because unfortunately a lot of these cute little stores are very sweet and with crafts and local, but if you want to get some underwear or a pair of socks or your kids' clothes for school, where are people going to go? They're going to go to one of the Walmart, which we lost out on. It's just over the line in Chatham County. So we have lost out because of other considerations, but maybe heresy. But right now, the only place in town where you can get some basic things like that is Dollar General, which is not the best place to go either, and very limited stock
Right.
for things like that, basic things. So I'm just saying that there's, I think, space to really think very outside the box, outside of, and I know these launch and entrepreneurial, and it's all very, that sounds wonderful, but I just would like to have a place in Carrboro where you can get your kids' school clothes, where you can get, if you need underwear, if you need some basic things like that, or, so I just hope that people will start thinking a little more creatively than they've been thinking.
I am with you, totally. And I think that as we move forward with an economic development plan for Carrboro, the important thing is that being balanced and being open to new ideas.
Exactly.
I know, talking to some of my Carrboro friends, I know that Walmart is not exactly their favorite thing. Target is not exactly their favorite thing. But what some people don't realize is the number one revenue raiser for all of Orange County is the Walmart in Hillsborough. The revenues from that Walmart, and some of that revenue, that sales tax revenue, comes to Carrboro. It pays for our bike lanes, it pays for our affordable housing, it pays for our greenways. In other words, businesses do good things for us, and we need to be welcoming to businesses. If we totally rule out the possibility of retail and something like a Target or a Walmart, if we rule that out, what does that mean for low, moderate income families looking for that pair of socks or that pair of underwear? They're driving to Durham and they're spending 20 minutes in the car, they're using up gas money, they're using up time, and their sales tax revenues are all going to Durham. We're losing that sales tax revenue in the process. So if we really believe in this being a home for people of all income levels, I think we need to be open to the idea that we also need to provide opportunities to consumers of all income levels, whether it's restaurants or coffee shops, but also retail. And so I think we need to open ourselves up to that possibility that having the opportunity to just walk down the street or come 5 minutes to be able to buy, people talk about for birthday parties, just being able to go somewhere simply and get that board game, or again, get that pair of socks, or it's hard in Carrboro, it really is. So I agree with you. Let's at least have those conversations.
And I would like it not to be Walmart because they don't pay fairly, but I understand at least Target did, Costco. I think it'd be nice to get a place that's very practical like that, but one that is also fair to what it pays its employees, so that it fits our values, but at the same time also better fits our needs. And I think that that's not an impossible thing.
Right.
I mean, there's a Target downtown now, but it's very small, and it's parking right in downtown Chapel Hill, but it'd be very nice to have in Carrboro or close by, a bigger Target, or I think Ellie was trying to get a Costco, and even a smaller Costco here. I think they probably felt they wouldn't make a good enough profit. But I think if we're open to that, we could find something that would pay a lot more taxes and would meet a lot more diverse needs of more people.
I do too. I think right now our issue is space, right? So Carrboro is one of the most densely populated communities in all of North Carolina. But my vision for the future, and maybe we're talking 20 years down the road, is that maybe we're moving toward a Carrboro where there is more commercial on the ground level, the street level, and then we have some residential on top of it. And I don't mean as high as Chapel Hill. We're a tiny town and we still have sort of a village mentality here, which I really appreciate. But maybe we do start looking for ways a little more commercial with, say, 2-3 levels of residential built on top of that.
Why not? The new apartments on North Greensboro Street are 3 stories?
The Shelton Station?
The Shelton
There's actually
Station.
4, I believe.
There's right on East Main Street that just a few blocks down is that building that's at least a couple stories high, the 600 block, I think, 601 or whatever.
The
so-
Hampton Inn, I believe. Is
Yeah.
the Hampton Inn 5 stories or?
It's pretty high,
Maybe
yeah.
5.
So I think that there's already, the barrier's been broken. I think a lot of times we all like those sweet little houses, with the big yard, but as things get more crowded and as land becomes more valuable, there's gonna be changes. And one of the things that I think when people realize if we go up, we can also get better public transportation because it would be more able to work it out because of the density of the population.
Absolutely. I think that's so critical in
Yeah.
terms of our development, that we develop in a compact way that can
Exactly.
support this transit. And folks who are already, struggling in terms of making ends meet, to be able to have more accessible public transit, which would, in some cases, maybe it means they don't even need a car. They can, the times they do need to get somewhere in a car, they just use an Uber or whatever, but I'm all for that. But I do want to mention one thing about Ellie, because she also was a visionary in terms of having a public library here in Carrboro, and it is coming. And
Is it?
very
When?
exciting. So
When?
the 203 project, I think it will happen. As you know, the Art Center has pulled out from being in the lower level of that, but the library will happen, and I'm really hopeful that we'll still keep it a 3-story building. Because I think Carrboro has a real shortage of commercial space.
Absolutely.
So it's, even though the Art Center is pulled out, let's still go
I
with the
did-
3
So
stories.
the Art Center did pull out. I wonder what that was about.
I don't know all the details,
Yeah.
but I know that we'll have, I think maybe the Public Works, the Parks and Recreation Department, I think will be in there.
That would be nice.
Which will be some nice space for them.
Yeah.
But the library will be a real draw, and it's a great thing. I think sometimes the kids in Chapel Hill, Carrboro are looking for more things to do, and having that downtown library, they can go, and then they can go get a sandwich afterwards or get some ice cream afterwards, so it's gonna be really nice for the local merchants as well.
Yeah, so I understood at least a year or so ago that the parking issue was what was holding it up. Is that being resolved?
It's in process.
Well,
It's a very complicated issue because, as you know, the library project, the 203 project, will be built on a municipal lot, which currently has close to 100 parking lots for parking spaces. And so the town is in the process of looking for ways to that we can, tap into some additional parking to accommodate these merchants during this construction process, which can take as long as 2 years.
Yeah. Well, we've been waiting years and years and years for it. I hope I'm still here when we get it.
You will be.
Well, it's been promised, and I'd sure love to see them get started on it. And is there a date they're hoping for? Or?
I've heard probably a couple years once construction begins. So I think I'm
So it's
thinking
still
we're
a couple
there.
years
We're
before-
heading into 2020, maybe 2022 would be.
Wow.
But I don't know if you've been to Chapel Hill Public Library recently. That is a busy place, and I think it's
And
the
the
most
parking is horrible.
tough there. So that's another reason I'm so excited about this library. Is it will relieve some of the pressure over at Chapel Hill, and also open up more opportunities for folks in Carrboro to bicycle or walk to their
That's
library.
if you're bicycling, that's up a pretty, on a summer day, that's a pretty mean hill to try to get up for bicyclists, So, we absolutely do need it because I have turned around where I've circled around trying to get a place to park and I've just given up, and I'm sure other people have too. So we desperately do need a more accessible library in Carrboro. So I hope it doesn't take another couple of years. Maybe they could just build another parking deck someplace, like a 5-story one somewhere, and take care of the parking. You know, there used to be a hardware store there. Once you make parking spaces, then they fill up, and then it's hard to get people to find another place, or maybe they'll start taking the bus more, I don't know.
We'd love to see more transit, and also I have an idea on some of this parking. There are actually some underutilized parking spaces with some of our local merchants. And so the question is, would they, if we had paid parking, and when I say paid parking, maybe the first couple of hours free, and then have, say, $1.50, 2 hour per hour parking fee. If we went toward a paid parking system, maybe that would be an incentive for some of these local merchants who have parking spaces that are not being used. Maybe they would be willing to release those into the public pool. And so they could be identified as being a part of this, what I'll call CARR, C-A-R-R, car park. And so folks, when they're driving around, maybe they could now have one of these parking apps on their phone that Chapel Hill uses that would help them identify some of these free spaces. And so it would save the, I don't know how many places would become available, but if we compensated some of these local merchants for releasing these unused parking spaces that they have, maybe that would be enough to meet some of our parking needs and save the expense of a parking deck. And by the way, a parking deck, I hear, can run anywhere from $25,000 per space. You heard that correctly.
Yeah.
So for Carborough to build a parking deck, you may be looking at $12-14 million. So talk about a place where taxes already feel high. They would feel a lot higher. So a parking deck, if we need it, I get that, if we need it someday. But I would love to explore other opportunities first, to see if we can get enough parking available for patrons that we didn't have to incur the cost of a parking deck.
And with the library, would it be possible to do some underground parking?
There will be underground parking.
There will be underground parking.
And I think a little bit more than is currently there at the municipal lot. But keep in mind, there's also going to be a lot of library patrons. There will be library employees. So those spaces are going to go fast, which still leaves all of these local merchants wanting places for their customers.
Maybe we can have a library trolley go all around, so I hope there'll be some creative thinking. I hope we get our library soon.
Well, here's a creative idea do you have another minute?
We have a couple, before we go to anything more about the library, so let's just, in a nutshell, get your platform, just so we can, before it's time to say goodbye.
Absolutely. So I think the most important thing about my platform is looking at affordability. It's looking at ways that we can grow our business space, looking at ways that we can provide more affordable housing, but also affordability means having more jobs with living wages, so people are making enough that they can afford to live here. And also affordability means more daycare opportunities, affordable daycare that perhaps is subsidized a little bit by the town. But another aspect of affordability that I think is so important is a word that you keep using. It's transit. I think that as we develop, we need to continue to look for ways that we develop in a compact way that will support transit so that folks can get to work and get home without having to incur any cost. There's something called a housing plus transportation affordability index. Housing should be less than 30% of your income. Transportation should be less than 15% of your income in order to be able to make it. So just think, if we could have more transit available, that 15%, maybe that becomes 5%, freeing up these tight budgets for some other items, critical items that will help people make it. So I'm all about looking for ways that we can make Carborough more affordable, and by making it more affordable, we will be able to protect the diversity that really goes to the core of our community.
And our time is almost up, but do I have 1 minute? You mentioned with Porch something about advocacy, mentioning climate, and I don't want to end the program without bringing up climate, where you have any particular?
Absolutely. So, what is so important, what we are learning is that transportation is quickly becoming the leading source of greenhouse emissions in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so that's telling us that we need to figure out a way to get us out of our cars, right?
Yes.
So the town gets tremendous credit for all of the things it's doing with LED lights and composting and electric charging stations and so many things that the town is taking real leadership on. But also, we've got to do more to get us out of our cars. I live on the northern part of town. I'm guilty of this, and I've got my car sitting out in the parking lot right now. But I think if we can look for more ways to bring transit even to the northern neighborhoods, and more ways that we can be offering transit services on weekends and during the late hours for, say, folks who are working at UNC Hospital or what have you, I think it's just so important. But climate action to me means one of the most important things will be how do we get out of our cars, walking, bicycling, and taking transit.
Yeah, and because I like you, I've got a car here. I live about a mile away, but I don't have a direct bus to come here. I'd have to take 2 buses,
Right.
and hope that they coincided, which they probably wouldn't. And so yeah, that something could be made a lot better, and maybe even with some smaller electric buses. So yeah, Susan, I'm so glad you came.
Oh, I was just delighted to be here. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me this
Yeah,
evening on
so
this
there's
rainy
so much to
evening.
talk about. Good luck.
Well, the hour just flew by, so I
I know,
appreciate
where did
all
it
the
go?
great questions and the great conversation.
Yeah, where did it go? Well, good luck with the election, and wish you the best.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.